My name is Lily Moayeri, and I'm one of Festival Insider's contributors. I'm very pleased to welcome Tom Astley-Williams of La Faire Musicale to Veteran Tales. Tom, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
As an LA resident, I'm very familiar with your events around town and, of course, across the continent, as well as with the artists you manage. But it took you a long time, and you've come a long way to get to this point, including being an artist yourself in the dubstep world. How did you get into dubstep?
I think the year was 2006. It was Plastic People, Shoreditch. I was a drum and bass head through and through in the early, mid to late 90s, even going into, the 2000s as well. And I think the first time it really captured my attention was when I walked into Plastic People. The night was forward. I think it was either Scream or Benga, or it could have been Scream and Benga back to back. I forget exactly what happened, but I remember it just being a momentous occasion for me. I walked in, the place was pitch black. I hadn't been used to kind of clubs being that dark. Even in drum and bass, they're dark, but they weren't as dark as Forward at Plastic People. And I just remember going in there, couldn't really see where I was going. And all I could hear was just these just thundering, bass lines, very, very minimal, but very, very piercing snares, and just being kind of taken aback and being like, wow, what the fuck is this? Sorry, excuse my French. And just kind of being blown away by the sparseness of the sound, but how big it sounded within the club. And I kind of just like clambered my way to the DJ booth. And I just remember there just being like one candle. And just, it was either, like I said, it was either Benga or Scream, and they were playing acetates at the time, all dub plates, I couldn't make out what they were playing, and just being that was just like, for me, just my kind of like life-changing moment. Again, I'd been, a hardcore, like drum and bass fan, hardcore rave breaks. And then just like this minimalist sound just captured me. And I was just like, okay, this is the future. And that was it. That was my kind of love affair with dubstep that started right then and there. And I wrote it for the next 6-7 years.
Okay, so just for our viewers, our readers, at this point, you're obviously from England, in case people can't recognize the accent. At this point, at the point that you discovered dubstep, you'd been living in New York, and you'd gone back to London, and you'd gone to Plastic People, which is of course a club in London, East London. Shoreditch is a neighborhood in East London, in case not every one of our readers has been there. So then you come back to London, bringing newfound love of dubstep with you. And I know that you were trying to be a producer before that, which is, if you're trying to do drum and bass and people haven't tried doing it, it's extremely, extremely difficult. It's really jumping in at the deep end. And it takes a lot of patience, a lot of time, a lot of dedication, which it's really almost a personality thing. I feel like you have to have the personality to really want to commit to that. It's not even about the love of the music. It's just like, oh yes, I'm willing to sit here and just like try and try and try. Yeah. And as a dubstep artist, you just really took to it. And all of a sudden, all your production know-how was really coming to its own with your duo, Hellfire Machina.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I feel like drum and bass was so difficult to produce, and especially the sound, of the late 90s, early 2000s. It was so well produced that I suppose as a producer myself, I struggled to be able to just like articulate what I wanted to do. Plus, I just wasn't as skilled in the studio as some of the guys were back then. The Ed Rush and Opticals, the Bad Companies were just making such futuristic like noises and music that it was so hard to emulate that it was I almost just kind of just gave up. It was just like, okay, this is way too difficult. Their mixdowns are incredible for the time, the DAWs that they were working with, the samplers, everything was they really pushed everything to the limits. Now with dubstep, it was way sparser. So when we got in the studio and I kind of started the project Hellfire Machina with my partner Jody at the time, it felt a tad easier. We just knew it had to be big, it had to be bass, super bassy, and then it was just about the elements that go alongside making a dubstep track of the time. You know, there was like just little washed out ragga samples, little Jamaican strings, and kind of, yeah, like kind of patois Jamaican sounds that were going on at the time that was in style, and they were easy to sample, and they weren't so difficult to try and process in synthesis. So yeah, I mean, the production just came on much quicker, easier. But then, you know, as we saw, you know, some of the dubstep dons of the era really came to life, and they started pushing the boundaries as well. People like Jay Kenzo just came out flying and was just like, wow, now he's taken it to another level. And then, you know, it was a crazy time, and everyone was pushing each other forward. But for me personally, yeah, I found it easier to construct, even though, you know, I probably wasn't one of the best at the time, but whatever. It's all good.
Yeah, but your project still blew up, and you were also able to do events, dubstep events in the US, and probably the first ones in New York, as far as I know. I know we had a whole different scene going on here at the time, but so you brought dubstep to the US. What were some of the things you were doing? Because I know you brought the UK guys over, as well as hosting the local people.
Yep. You know, like I think from around 2006 to 2009, like especially I was living in New York at the time. You know, we both Jody and I were watching closely what was happening in the UK. Scream, Benga, Plastician, Jay Kenzo, a lot of like the early kind of pioneers, Hatcher, and we would just handpick them and then bring them over. And you know, the sound started to really translate in New York. People were coming out, and I think really for us that's where I really cut my teeth as an event producer, because I was so passionate about the sound. We started in small rooms in Brooklyn at places like Cameo and a few other, you know, kind of, I would say, you know, 200-300 hole in the wall kind of event spaces. And we would just bring, you know, we'd bring the UK guys out. And as the sound started to kind of resonate, we kind of, it started to really, I mean, its impact was pretty immediate. And then suddenly, you know, there was a batch of American producers coming out for all over the nation, making really good things, and we saw it just starting to escalate and escalate. You know, and then as it kind of like changed over, you know, around, I'd say the 2008 2009 era, there was Nero, there was who else? I mean, Casper and had come out, and things started to really take off. And that's when we were like, okay, we need to take this to the bigger stage. And that's when we secured a monthly at Webster Hall, with the boys and girls kind of crew there. And we were doing, you know, monthly Fridays and Saturdays. We'd start bringing in some of the bigger guys over from the UK, and it just really just started to spiral from there, you know. And then, you know, it wasn't long before the US really caught on, and you know, a lot of the producers got busy, and you know, and that's where, you know, I'd say from 2009 to 2012 was kind of like the US dubstep era of where it really took off. And yeah, I suppose we were kind of like one of the first to be responsible for that, and just really, you know, nurturing the talent around us. I think we're a little bit older than everybody else, and just, you know, just trying to build a scene, which ended up, you know, to this day is, you know, the bass scene is huge out here. It's not necessarily dubstep anymore, but it did come from that. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, and here we are.
Yeah, no, but it's unusual, your trajectory from going from being an artist to just being an event producer. A lot of times it actually goes the other way. And I know you're still DJing, and it's super fun when you're behind the decks, at least for me. So you completely transitioned out of being an artist. How did that decision come about? And then now, you know, you're absolutely not known for dubstep at all. And this transition, not only out of being an artist, but also out of that whole sound and into a whole other sound, which to me makes a lot of sense, but it may not make sense to some people from the outside who may not quite have reached that age yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I transitioned out of the scene in 2012 just because I thought that dubstep at that point, especially in the US, had kind of it had turned into something that it wasn't when it first began. you know, what started as a roots, sparse, very underground sound had turned into something way bigger, way noisier, way louder. The fan base that were into it had changed as well. You know, when I first started, it was a lot of kind of underground heads, skateboard kids, kind of metalers who would, you know, who could get into it, people like, you know, ragga, reggae, drum and bass, all of that. And then, you know, by 2012, it had changed into this just kind of monstrous like music that was just all about the impact of the sound, not so much the structure of the sound. It was just, it felt like it was just two robots going to war. And I just tuned out of it. It wasn't hitting well for me. And I'll just talk truthfully, you know, at that time, like there was just a lot of music that I wasn't feeling. The crowd had changed. You know, I think the last time I played a festival was Starscape in Baltimore. I looked over the crowd. I think I was like 30 at the time. And just looking at the crowd, it was very, very young. Everyone was moshing and it lost its appeal to me. And I, you know, that was when I kind of hung up my headphones and hung up you know, not hung, I wasn't completely gone from the scene, but I knew that I was ready to go on to new pastures. I felt too old for it as well. And I feel like the US scene had turned kind of dubstep and no, you know, this is no, like, I'm not trying to, you know, say anything bad about the way that the scene went, but just for me, it wasn't hitting like spiritually and emotionally anymore. So for me, I was just, it was a quick hard out. And yeah, I just pivoted really, really hard. And I think it was probably to do with age. I'd been raving for so long as well that I wanted like a new experience in raving. Like I'd kind of, you know, since I was 14, I'd been, you know, just going ham at clubs and raves, and it was just all energy dancing. And I kind of wanted a different experience in dance music which wasn't so intense, in your face, you know, something a little bit more laid back. And that's when, you know, I suppose like I found my love for like house, disco and techno. And yeah, I kind of made a pivot to that kind of scene. And I've been there ever since. But, you know, I do reminisce a lot over, you know, my rave drum and bass and dubstep days, and I still crave it and I still go, you know. I just can't, I can't be in it all the time, if that makes sense.
Well, I remember when we met, and I think I brought up going to Respect or another drum and bass event, and you're like, oh, Respect, who's playing? Ooh, what's happening there? And there was so much like instant, I was like, okay, this is a real bungalist here. I mean, yeah. Look at how your entire face changed. Yep. You know, your energy changed, and you got like instantly way more enthusiastic about everything because you were just like, oh, what's happening? And when's that? Oh, did I miss that already? And it was great. I was like, oh, wow. You know, sometimes I do know that it has a very big impact on people that doesn't really get erased at any point. You may not be going as often, but it's not gone.
That's certainly true with drum and bass for me. I mean, it will always be my number one love. You know, I'm tattooed with drum and bass affiliations, and it will always go down as my number one, you know, and it lights everything up. And yeah, and I think when we first met, I was very new to LA and I didn't know that there was a drum and bass night. And I was always complaining when I moved to the States, is like, why is drum and bass not bigger than it is? You know, and I've always been a massive advocate to push it forward, but it's always been kind of futile because it is so niche and so small here. But I actually really appreciate it that it is like that, you know, and everyone who's in the scene are all people like yourself and me, a bit older. We all come from that kind of that time, and I think that's just how it is, and I like it. I like it that way.
Yeah. But you've got so many events going on, or have over the years that you've been in Los Angeles. Tell us about some of your current events that you're involved with, because I know obviously with the pandemic and still with things not being 100% safe, you're being a lot safer, and like toning, like the number of events you're doing are fewer. But of course, Wicked Paradise is one of your flagship events, and there's just so many. But You can tell us a little bit about Wicked Paradise, which is
Yeah.
very few pool things we can do, as well as the other things you have going on, Eva's house and
Yeah.
the emo event and all of
Yeah,
that,
we
as well
do.
as festivals.
Yeah, we do a selection of different events, and obviously for the last 2 years we've been pretty quiet. Things have been, just due to the pandemic, things really, really had a massive impact on our events. But it's nice to kind of be coming back into the fray. But I have to say, I think Wicked Paradise being our kind of premier event that is a summertime event, we're starting to plan for that in LA. Waiting for the winter to come to an end, and so we can get back into our spaces that have swimming pools and our boat parties and our yacht parties that we do. Those are all being booked right now. We've got a stacked summer of boats, pools, rooftops, outdoor parties stacked in LA, New York, Miami, SF, and Chicago are kind of our major markets. So yeah, lots happening on that front. It's been a strange start to the year as well, just with Omicron as well. So we haven't wanted to pull the trigger too early, but I think we're going to have an open summer. So yeah, looking forward to it. But again, yeah, I mean, Wicked Paradise, I started Wicked Paradise about 4 or 5 years ago, probably a year after I moved into LA. And I remember just, being in LA and just being like, wow, there seems to be a real lack of outdoor daytime parties. As I've gotten older, I much prefer a daytime party because I can be out by 7 o'clock with my pizza in bed at 8 and, feeling okay for the next day. Like, 3 a.m., 4 a.m. Nights scare me these days. But so, Wicked Paradise was really set up because, I kind of saw a gap in the market for these day parties. And, that's why I started bringing in some more kind of French disco, French touch DJs, more obscure kind of lineups, and just kind of daytime, pool-time vibes, which has, continued to build. And, I think something that the culture in LA has changed as well, where I think day parties are now really making a big splash throughout the summer. And as they should, we live in a place that caters for that. There's good weather pretty much year round here, and the summers are beautiful. Why not?
Yeah. But you also have your evening things that are doing similar type of music, really. Not all of them, but some of them, more on the house tip and tropic house, which I feel like you were very instrumental to bringing in LA, because I think LA wanted it, but nobody was bringing it. Yeah. Because as soon as you started bringing those things over, people are like, yes, it's here. Finally, they're having these events. And you have your, I don't know what I want to call it, the adult house party. Oh, that sounds like it's something else. The grown-up house party.
Yeah. Eva's Playhouse.
Eva's Playhouse out in Orange County. Yeah.
It is, yeah, out in Orange County. Yeah, we're doing that every couple of months. Yeah, I think it's geared probably towards an older crowd, geared towards a crowd like us, I suppose. A more just older adult, but it's a place for kind of us oldies to get together and have fun as well. A lot of the LA clubs and the scenes, especially in kind of house bass music, just EDM in general, just tends to feel quite young, and that's just probably coming from me, who's much older now. So sometimes we feel a little not left out, but it can be uncomfortable being around kids who are just are new to the club life. They're in their 20s, and we're obviously old enough to sometimes be their their mothers and fathers. So it's good. I think we built Eva's Playhouse to have a place for us slightly older people to go out and still have a good time around our friends. It's house music driven, it's techno driven, and it feels like a family that we're creating there.
An excuse to get dressed up as well. You've got some couple of festivals you're involved with. Can you tell us anything about that yet? Too soon?
We just had a festival in Miami that we were involved in called We Belong, which went really well. That was happening this past weekend. We're very involved in Loving Life Festival, which is coming to LA July 3rd and 4th. And then we are also navigating and curating a main stage at Groove Cruise Cabo, which will happen in October.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, you know, things are starting to pick up. You know, we've been toying with the idea of taking Wicked Paradise to the festival level, but again, with the way the state of the world has been for the last 2 years, I think we're patiently waiting for the right time. But I'm sure in the future, Wicked Paradise will get to that level where we will be doing our own kind of a one-off festival.
Wow.
Using the brand.
So let's talk about your artist, because you've gone to the other side now. You're an artist manager where you used to be an artist, which honestly, I feel like artists sometimes can make the best managers because they know, they know the game. How did your previous experience feed into this? And tell us a little bit about your artists, which are wide ranging.
Yeah. I felt like it was always going to be a natural progression, you know, being a producer, being a touring DJ. I had a manager, I had an agent, and kind of, you know, then transitioning into event curation, doing events, promoting, being a promoter. I felt like the natural progression was always going to be able to, was always going to go into artist management, you know, and, you know, I think all of the experience now just plays into, you know, what we do here as like at La Femme Musicale as a like our culture and the way that we manage. You know, I think our experience just, it just helps us guide, you know, and it's now become, I suppose, probably my favorite part of what we do, you know, artist development, managing our roster, guiding them, I think it gives me the most joy out of everything that we do now. And it's just, it's the experience has just helped, you know, push our kind of our consulting and our roster forward as well. And I think, you know, it all started when I met Jay Wara 4 or 5 years ago here in LA. I was very intrigued by her music, the way that she went about her production, her style, everything. And I just was like, okay, this is something that I can really gravitate towards and I can really help out with, you know, and the hard work is now, you know, finally starting to pay off. And I think, you know, her kind of ascent into the house music world and her impact over the last couple of years has been really, really great, really phenomenal. And it's you know, we've now transitioned into, you know, artist development and bringing in a few other people as well on the roster. You know, my priority is still her. And, you know, we also work with DJ Soda, who is completely, I suppose, not the opposite, but, you know, musically completely different to Jay Wara. Jay Wara, you know, is a house music technician. DJ Soda is more in the EDM pop world, but she's also an absolutely fierce DJ. And I think it was her DJ skills that really set me back. And I was like, okay, she's the real deal. Let's work with her. You know, we've got Jamie on tour right now, who's got, you know, a tour for the next 3 months. We're setting up another 3-month tour for DJ Soda when she comes back to the US in April. And then, you know, we have a lot of developing artists as well. You know, another incredible producer that we work with is Return of the Jaded out of Canada. He's based in Ottawa. And he's just, yeah, I mean, as a producer, he's one of my favorite producers on the come up right now. And I think he's going to have a massive year. So, you know, those are some of my priorities right now. But I think all of the experience from when I was 14 back in the, you know, going to raves in the 90s is now paying dividends, you know, in my role now. So, yeah.
Well, I trust your tastes, that's for sure, both as a promoter and as an artist manager. Tom, thank you so much for giving us so much of your time, and looking forward to seeing you poolside soon once it stops being so cold in LA.
Absolutely.
I don't know if people can tell, but you're pretty bundled up.
I'm a little cold. It's a little cold today. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, well, thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
Hey Insiders, thanks for watching this video. If you're new here, please consider subscribing to our channel or feel free to check out our recommended videos. Thanks for watching.